Good day everyone. So today I will now be discussing about chapter 12, managing marketing communications, and the first part is my task. So modern marketing calls for more than developing a good product, pricing and it attractively and making it accessible. Companies must also communicate with current and potential stakeholders and the general public to inform them about the attributes of their offerings. Actually, for most marketers, therefore, the question is not whether to communicate, but rather what to say, how and when to say it, to whom and how often. So, marketing communications can have a huge payoff. This chapter describes how they work and what they can do for a company. It also addresses how holistic marketers combine and integrate marketing communications. So, the learning objectives of this chapter is that first, to explain the role of marketing communications. Second is that define meaningful communication objectives. Third, describe how a company should identify target customers and craft the communication message. Explain how a company should decide on the communication media mix and develop a media plan. Next is that describe the creative strategies involved in developing an effective communication campaign. Next is that identify actionable metrics for measuring communication effectiveness. So, first is that what is the role of marketing communication? Marketing communication is the means by which firms attempt to inform, persuade, and remind consumers directly or indirectly about the products and brands they sell. Marketing communications also works by showing consumers how and why a product is used, by whom, where, and when. Consumers can learn who makes the product and what the company and brand stand for, and they can become motivated to try to use it. So, next is the communication process. So, marketers should understand the fundamental elements of effective communication. The communication process can be viewed from two perspectives: a more general macro perspective delineating the key aspects of communication as an interactive process, and a more specific micro perspective focusing on the way the message recipient responds to the communication. So first is that the macro model of the communication process. So the macro model of marketing communication articulates the interaction between the sender, which is the company, and the recipient, consumer, of the communication message. Next is, so as you see, this figure 12.1 states that shows a macro model denoting 9 key factors in effective communication. So 2 represents the major parties, the sender and the receiver. And the 2 represents the major tools, which is the message and media. And the 4 represents major communication functions, which is the encoding, decoding, response, and feedback. And the last element in the system is noise, which is random and competing messages that may interfere with the intended communication. Senders must know what audiences they want to reach and what responses they want to evoke. Next is that micro-model marketing communication. So micro-model of marketing communication, it is concentrates on consumers' specific responses to communication. So let's come to several steps are involved in generating a consumer response. First is that awareness. In order to take any kind of action, customers must be aware of the existence of the company's offering. If most of the target audience is unaware of the offering, the communicator task is to build awareness. Next is knowledge. Knowledge is this is the target audience might have awareness but not know much more about the offering. So the consumers should also have aware, or they should knowledgeable about what is your product that you are offering to them. And liking is that members of the target audience may know the brand but how do they feel about it. Yun. And preference is that the target audience might like the product but not prefer it to other products. So the communicator must then try to build consumer preference by comparing the product's quality, value, performance, and other features to those of likely competitors. Next is that conviction. This states that the target audience might prefer a particular product but not develop a conviction about buying it. Although they want to, for example, some consumers wants to something to buy but they have no taste of trying to buy that particular product. Next is purchase. Finally, some members of the target audience might have conviction but not quite get around to making the purchase. The communicator must lead these consumers to take the final steps, perhaps by offering the product at a low price, offering a premium, or letting them try it out. So to increase the odds of success for a communication campaign, marketers must attempt to increase the likelihood that each step occurs. So thus, the communication campaign must ensure that the right consumer is exposed to the right message at the right place and at the right time. Second is that the offering is correctly positioned in terms of desirable and deliverables, points of difference, and points of parity. Next is that the consumers pays attention to the campaign and adequately comprehend the intended message, and that last is that consumers are motivated to consider purchasing and using the offerings. So next is that the developing an effective communication program. To develop an effective communication program, a company must follow a systematic process that starts with setting the goals to be achieved by the communication campaign and concludes with assessing the outcome of the campaign. So, as you see this figure 12.2, this includes the setting of the communication objectives, identifying the target audience, crafting the communication message, selecting the communications channels, developing the creative approach, and measuring performance. Measuring the performance. So, the ultimate success of a company's communication campaign depends on the viability of the overall strategy and tactics for managing the company's offering, which serves as a basis for developing communication plan. So, next is that setting the communication objectives. So, defining the focus of a company's communications. Setting the objectives of communication campaign involves three key decisions. So first is that defining the focus of company communication. Next is that setting the communications benchmarks and determining the communication budget. So defining the focus of company communication. So communication objective is a specific task and achievement level to be accomplished with a specific audience in a specific period of time. So we have here classification of communications objectives according to whether they aim to create awareness by informing the target audience about the offering and to build preference and by persuading the audience of the benefits of the offerings or to incite an action by nudging the audience to act in a way that benefits of the company and its offering. So first is that creating awareness provides a foundation for brand equity. Creating awareness involves fostering the consumer's ability to recognize or recall the brand in sufficient detail to make a purchase. Next is that building preferences involves communicating an offering's ability to meet currently relevant consumer needs. Some relevant needs are negatively oriented or problem removal, problem avoidance, incomplete satisfaction, normal depletion. So for example, many household cleaning products communicate their ability to solve problems, or our other needs are positively oriented sensory gratification, intellectual stimulation, or social approval. So, for example naman is that food products or often use sensory oriented ads emphasizing appetite appeal. So, that's it. Next is that inciting action involves motivating consumers to decide to purchase the brand or to take purchase-related action. So, promotional offers like coupons or 2-for-1 deals encourage consumers to make a mental commitment to buy, but many consumers do not have an expressed category need and may not be in the market when exposed to an ad, so they are unlikely to form purchase intentions. The communication objectives should emerge from a thorough analysis of the current marketing situation. If the product class is mature, the company is the market leader, a brand usage is low. The objective might be to stimulate more frequent usage. If the product class is new, the company is not the market leader and the brand is superior to the leader. The objective might be to convince the market of the brand's superiority. So this figure 12.3, which states about the current consumer states for two offerings. So as you see here, we find that 80% of the consumers in the total market are aware of brand A, while 60% have tried it and only 20% who tried it are satisfied. So this indicates that communication programs is effective in creating awareness, but the product fails to meet consumers' expectations. Hence, in this case, the company might benefit from focusing on improving the product. In contrast, 40% of the consumers in the total market are aware of brand B, and 30% have tried it, but 80% of them are satisfied. So, in this case, the communication program might benefit from focusing on creating awareness and encouraging brand trial. Next is that setting the communication benchmarks. So in addition to defining the focus of the communication campaign, a company must set clear benchmarks that define the magnitude of the desired impact and the time frame within which a particular outcome, awareness, preference, or action must be achieved. To be actionable, a communication objective must have a clearly articulated focus as well as clearly defined quantitative and temporal benchmarks. Defining quantitative and temporal benchmark is important also because without knowing what particular outcome needs to be achieved and a time frame for achieving it, a company will find it difficult to design an effective communication program. And in addition to guiding the development of a communication campaign, quantitative and temporal benchmarks are important for determining the effectiveness of the company's communication activities. Next is the determining the communication budget. One of the most difficult marketing decisions is choosing how much to spend on marketing communications. A practical approach for defining the communication budget is objective and task budgeting. This approach calls for marketers to develop a communication budget by defining specific objectives, identifying the tasks must be performed to achieve these objectives, and estimating their cost. So here are the main factors to consider when setting the communication budget. Follow. First is that stage in the product life cycle. So new products typically merit large communication budgets to build awareness and encourage consumer trial. Next is that product differentiation, offerings in less differentiated categories, for example, beer, soft drinks, banks, and airlines, so often require more advertising to establish a unique image than do offerings that provide distinct benefits. Next is that market share. High market share brands usually require less advertising expenditure measured as a percentage of sales to maintain share. Next is that message complexity. So the number of repetitions needed to get the company's message across to consumers has a direct impact on the communication budget. More complex messages tend to require more repetition and hence a larger communication budget. Next is reach. A company's ability to reach consumers in an effective and cost-efficient manner. Communications to customers who are more difficult to reach to tend to require a larger communication budget. Next is that competitive communication in markets with a large number of competitors and high communication spending, a brand must advertise more heavily to be heard. Available resources. The communication budget is limited by the company's resources. After all, a company cannot spend something it does not have. Even communications that directly competitive to the brand create clutter to be heard. Available resources. A communication budget is limited by the company's resources. After all, a company cannot spend something it does not have. Okay. To set the meaningful communication budget, a company must take into account all of these factors. Yet, some companies fail to consider all factors and instead single out one particular metric. So, that would be all about my report, and I hope you have learned some insights about this. And the next part 2 of this chapter will be discussed by Sir Vicente Adriatico. Thank you.